Hi there. Once there was some survey going on about how people work and how people can create excellence in their work. The survey was led by a consultant and the whole team was working on a vast land where some work was going on. First, one of the surveyors went to a guy who was sitting down under an umbrella and he was breaking stones. And he goes and asks him, "Hey, what work are you doing there?" The guy didn't reply and he repeats, "Did you hear me? I am asking you, what work do you do here?" The man was breaking stone. He lifts his face and looks at him and says, "Are you blind? I break stones here." "Oh, I see you break stones here. How much money you get?" He said, "I get $50 a day." "I see." The man goes to another man who was placing some bricks in order to create a fence. And he goes up to him and said, "Hello, what work are you doing here?" This man looks at him and says, "Don't you see I am a laborer? I do the labor work here." "Oh, I see you are a laborer. Would you tell me how much money you get?" He says, "I get $50 a day." Then he goes a little farther and there was a man who was standing on a fence and doing something, and he looks at him and says, "Excuse me, what work are you doing here?" The man immediately turns, jumps down and reaches up to this guy and says, "You are asking me? Don't you know we are all doing a great work here? We are building a temple here." "Oh, I see. You are building a temple here. Would you mind telling me how much money you get?" He said, "I get $50 a day." All the three people earn the same amount of money. But what is the difference between the first two and the third one? Although he is doing the same work, there is something different in his mind. There is something different in its attitude. The first two were doing the work of an obligation. They were doing it just because they had to do it. They didn't have any choice. So they just accepted the situation and just doing their duty. Most of the people who just do that minimum duty, I call them people of obligation. My today's topic is the alphabet O. I am talking about a transformation from obligation to a capital O, opportunity. There are some people who just don't do the work as a matter of duty. They have some more enthusiasm. Can you think of another word which is like duty, but much more than duty, much better than duty? That obligation element is not there, something more is there. You know what that word is? That word is service. When I think of the word service, I found these letters, SERVICE, suggest something very beautiful. S stands for smile. At least this man has got a smile in his face. While do the work with smile means he is happy. E stands for enthusiasm. He is not just doing the work, he is enthusiastic about doing it. He has got a little more energy. As Mr. Dale Carnegie says, put a little more enthusiasm in whatever you do. R stands for responsibility. When he does the work, he takes the responsibility. He takes the responsibility of the work, of the commitment, and even wherever necessary, responsibility of satisfying the client, satisfying the buyer or customer or consumer. V stands for voice. When he communicates, giving service, his voice is sweet, loud, clear, affectionate, warm. That's very important. I stands for initiative, a very important faculty in a person's character. Most people lack this attitude, and that's why they become mediocre. And they just get down to doing minimum duty, nominal duty. And when people take initiative, they have greater energy, they have greater productivity, they create better impact in others. C stands for commitment, not involvement, but commitment. Commitment means complete completely dedicated with total commitment. They put their heart, they put their soul, they put their mind, their brain, their fingers, their feet, everything into the job. When they do their job, they are 101% focused and they are consistent. Commitment and consistency travel together. They are not the quitters. And last E stands for very important, execution. Being enthusiastic and not being able to execute will not lead you anywhere. So, finally, people who are delivering service, they have a smile in their face, they are enthusiastic, they take the responsibility, they have a warm, lovely voice, they take initiative, they are committed, and they also execute the job. And this makes the whole thing complete. So people of obligation, they just do the bare minimum. They only do the allocated part of the job. They only try to complete the job on a time-bound basis. And they do the job just because they have to. They do not put in that little more, that extra energy into the job. But the moment you change your perspective from obligation and look at the job as an opportunity for you to prove yourself, for you to create something new, for you to make your mark, to set an example, and to satisfy others, then your whole work and the quality of work changes. You create excellence in everything that you do. This change between obligation and opportunity, I remember a very wonderful story which I heard from Mr. Shiv Khera. And I cannot think of any other story as appropriate. It's a real life incident of Mr. Shiv Khera's life. Once he was in Singapore and he had to go somewhere, and he hired a cab, and the taxi driver could not find the place, so he had to take a little more round, and finally he reached the destination. The bill was $11, some amount, more than $11. But the taxi driver said, "Sir, I will charge $10. He said, "Henry, but your bill is 11 point something. Why do not you charge the full amount?" That guy said, "Sir, I am a driver. My job is to help you reach your place, and you have come from outside. So I couldn't reach you to the right place. That extra travel that I had to do is my loss. So you will pay me only $10. Does this some way qualify what is the difference between duty and service? Look at the attitude of the driver. He was not just a duty-bound person. He was not contented by only doing his best. He put a little more. He created a satisfaction in the mind, a delight in the mind of the customer. Long time ago, I went to Singapore for a training course, and this training course was on service. And there I met another participant, and we shared one room. His name was John. He came from Australia. Both of us went for the training, and the training was on service attitude. As a part of the training, we were required to deliver a practical experience and a presentation on what is a good service attitude. So we were sent in the marketplace to do some survey and create a presentation. I was a bit confused, but John helped me. He said, "I have come to this city and I stayed here before. I can give you a tip. You go to this particular departmental store and they offer very good service. So you can buy your things from there, and you can also complete your survey, and I'm very sure you will have something to present next week when we have a presentation session." I was very happy. I went to that swanky, beautiful, expansive departmental store, and I also had to buy something for my back home, and I used my credit card, and I took the trolley and I filled up a lot of things because I had to stay there for the next 15 days. I also wanted to buy something for being there, also carrying something home. So I brought some fruits, and amongst the fruits, my favorite food is grapes. So I bought some grapes, and I bought some other items. I brought some juices, and some detergents, some biscuits and few other stuff, and my trolley was absolutely filled. And when I was coming out with all my stuff, I found there were two queues. On one side there was a guy, there was a very long queue in that particular side, and on the other side the queue was small. Eventually these two queues were for bagging the goods. There's a guy who is standing there and whose job is to bag the items that you have bought. So one bagger was on the right, another bagger was on the left. The guy on the left has a small queue and the guy on the right had a very long queue. I thought it would be wise to stand behind the small queue, and that's the mistake I did. I kept standing for a long time. I didn't know what is happening until I looked at that guy. When I looked at the other side, the queue continued to be big, but it was moving. It was moving very fast. Who was making the difference? The guy who was bagging was making the difference. The guy who was bagging in the queue that I was standing, he was a lazy one. His body language was absolutely dull. I could see him from a distance that he dislikes his job. He is compelled to do his job. He is sluggish. And he has a frown on his head, and that sense of discomfort, that sense of frustration was revealing from his body language. So he was taking a lot of time, and eventually my trolley had a lot of goods. When my turn came in, my God, this man gave him a very irritated look, and he shrugged his shoulder back and kept on looking at me. He didn't say anything, but I could hear he was saying, "I've never seen such a foolish man who has come to our shop and bought so many things. And I am in this damn job that I got to pack them now. But what can I do?" He pulled his hands and first of all get those crepes. And he shook the bag open and put the crepes at the bottom. And then he picked up my heavy juice can and just left the juice can over the crepes. My God. Then he thrust in the biscuits, then thrust in the detergent, then thrust in all other stuff that I've got, and the bag was full. The moment I held the bag, I felt, my God, the bag is thin and it's going to give way, but he didn't care. He handed me over the bag. I was feeling so embarrassed, I just wanted to run away after paying to the cashier. By the time the cashier was also ready. But I took my bag, and before I could leave the place, the bag gave in with all my items scattered on the floor. You know who I was blaming? Not that bagger, but John. I remembered he said that you will get best quality service. I was very angry. But I looked back at that man who could clearly see that my goods are all scattered. But he just turned his face off and looked at the next guy in the queue and said, "Next." Well, with that terrible experience, I came back to the hotel and I faced John. I said, "That's what you call a good service, John. You come to India, which is not so much famous for best service in the world, but we are much better than that shop." John was wittily smiling, looking at me. And he asked me one question. "Ashit, tell me which side you went finally, on the left, on the right?" "Left, perhaps." I was shocked. Then I remembered the other queue, which was very long, moving faster. I knew what John meant, and John said, "I didn't tell you because I knew you were going to do that mistake. But never mind, you will have a very clear understanding of what is a good service and what is a bad service when I take you to the shop myself tomorrow. I also got to buy things. I had this plan, Ashit." So John and I went once again to the same departmental stores. I went round with John. He filled up his trolley and he came back and stood behind that long queue, and he made me stand in the center, and I kept on observing both sides and compare what is the quality of service these two baggers were giving. And I could clearly see that guy in the counter of John for the first time. He was so active, he was so busy, he was so enthusiastic. There was a smile in his face. He was taking the initiative and he was so eager to execute, and he couldn't overlooked John coming and standing behind the queue. And he recognized John and waves his hand from his counter and repeatedly making a body language to tell him, I know your problem, but don't worry, I'm going to do very fast. I'm going to come to you very soon. Who is going to come to whom? Is the customer going to come to him, or he is going to go to him? That is the approach. John smiled back, and quickly the queue moved up. John's turn came in, and I came close to hear what's happening. This man was smiling, looking at, making an eye contact, shook hands with John quickly, and immediately said, I didn't see you for a long time. Last time you said that you were going for your holidays. How is the weather in Frankfurt? While saying this, he was not standing. He was doing a lot of work. And first of all, he picked up the juice can, which was heaviest, and put it in the bag. Then the less heavy, and the grapes were on the top. Then he lifted the bag, and he said, oh my God, it's very heavy. So let me do one thing. He took out another bag and put the first bag into the second bag. Now it was sturdy. He held both the bags together. He was about to hand it over to John, but he stopped a little. He said, no. Customers, don't worry. He's my old customer. I got to look after him. I'll be back in a minute. He quickly rushed back and reached the bag near the exit gate, stood there for a while, bid goodbye to both of us, and I heard him screaming, hope to see you back soon. And then we boarded the car and came back to our hotel. John was smiling. He said, Rashid, I hope you know the difference between the two baggers. When you ask the first bagger, what job are you doing? He will shrug off and say, are you mad? I'm a bagger. How much you get? $10 a day. And you ask the same question to the second bagger, the double bagger. He's going to say, me? You're asking me my job? I'm a very important person in this departmental stores. My job is to ensure the customer is delighted and he comes back to my departmental stores and contributes to the profit of my organization. That's the difference between an obligation and an opportunity. The opportunity man doesn't depend on training. He has it inside him. And with that attitude, he uses his creativity, his little extra input to create excellence. So that was my topic today. A transformation from small o to capital O. Most of the people in the world works with a spirit of obligation, but not you anymore. So next time, every time you get a job or you take up a job, take care. Don't get back into the obligation fold. Take it as an opportunity and make a great thing out of you. All the best. Till next time.